tiresome at home, all day long with nothing to do. What do you do to pass the time? Well, I like reading stories and spending time with my good mouse friends Jack and Gus. Yes, of course, my prince is kind as well. He loves hearing one story in particular, the story of how we met. Would you like to hear that story as well? You don't know it that well? Well, that's no problem. I'm always here to tell a story. This story has all of the best parts of any good story. It has magic, princes, pumpkins and carriages and things. But most importantly, it's a story all about magic, how dreams come true, and how every girl can be a princess. Every girl can be a princess, any dream can be. Close your eyes and see a magic wand, and soon you've gone from just to royalty. You don't need a grand old castle rising in the air, needs to brush your hair. Your heart is pure, your thoughtful, surely, princess, you're almost there. Why, just putting on a tiara, and you are the same old you. My whole life changed completely by just putting on a shoe. Who knew? Every girl can be a princess, fashion can be learned. Words can still be turned by your sweetness, style and grace you know you've already earned. Hold your head high and keep smiling, 'cause that's just what a princess does. You're as beloved and beguiling as ever a princess was. Every girl can be a princess, all that's left to do is find a prince for you. A prince is born who'll hold you your whole life through. The most perfect princess is here. And just like that, without further ado, how about we read a story? And now, without further ado or another second to waste, for it's almost midnight, let's start the story. This story's name is Cinderella. And it starts where all good stories start, at once upon a time. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a rich widow gentleman and his beautiful daughter, me, Cinderella. My father was kind and loving. He married for a second time so I might have a mother to care for me. My stepmother was mean and ugly, and she had two evil stepdaughters called Anastasia and Drizella. When my father died, my stepmother stopped pretending to like me. She was jealous of my charm and beauty, so she forced me to become a servant in my own home. I was given a tiny bedroom in the attic. My only friends were birds and mice. They listened as I sang about how a dream is a wish your heart makes when you're fast asleep. And then one morning I found a tubby little mouse caught in a trap. "We'll call you Gus," I said. Then I gently set him free and put him with the other mice. "Don't forget to warn him about Lucifer," I reminded them, and off I went to begin my day's chores. Lucifer was my stepmother's cat. He was sly and lazy, and all the animals hated him, especially Bruno, my dog. After I had given Lucifer his milk, I walked out into the yard. "Breakfast time!" I called, scattering corn for the chickens. The mice came running for some breakfast too, but Lucifer was blocking our way. One of the mice, Jacques, crept bravely to Lucifer and kicked him. There was a loud splash. This made Lucifer very angry. When he saw Gus busily gathering up some of the corn, he pounced on him. Luckily, Gus managed to escape to the kitchen. He scampered up onto a tabletop where he rested against a teacup. Suddenly, the cup flipped over, trapping Gus underneath. Just then, a voice shrieked from upstairs, "Cinderella!" I sighed. "I'm coming!" I picked up the breakfast trays and made my way upstairs. Under the teacup, Gus was safe at last. Not far away, in the royal palace, the king and duke were talking about the prince. "It's time he got married," grumbled the king. Suddenly, he had an idea. "We'll have a ball tonight," he cried, "and invite every young maiden. He will surely fall in love with one of them." So, invitations went out that very same day. When the royal messenger delivered the message to me, I went to find my stepmother. She was upstairs in the music room, listening to Anastasia and Drizella singing. "There's going to be a ball at the palace," exclaimed my stepmother as she read the invitation. "Every young maiden is to attend." "Why, that means I can go too," I said, hopefully. Anastasia and Drizella shrieked with laughter at the idea, but I was determined. "Well, why not?" I asked. My stepmother thought for a moment. Then a sly look crossed over her face. "I see no reason why you can't go, if you get all of your work done." "I'm sure I can," I cried, rushing upstairs to find something to wear. I opened my wardrobe and took out one of my mother's old gowns. "It's a little old-fashioned, but I can fix that," I said. "Cinderella!" shrieked her stepmother. "I'm coming," I sighed. The mice knew that I would not have time to finish that dress, so they decided to work on it themselves. They sang merrily as they cut and sewed the material. At last, the pretty dress was finished. It was trimmed with an old sash and beads which Anastasia and Drizella had thrown away. Later that evening, I sadly returned to my attic room. I had been so busy that I hadn't had time to get ready. Out of the window, I watched a carriage arrive to take my stepmother and stepsisters to the ball. As I turned away, I suddenly saw the dress. "Surprise!" my friends called. "Oh, it's wonderful!" I exclaimed, hardly able to believe my eyes. In no time at all, I had slipped into the dress and was rushing downstairs to the carriage. But when Anastasia and Drizella saw me looking so beautiful in that beautiful dress, they were filled with jealousy. "But why, you little thief!" they screamed, spotting her old beads around my neck. Then Anastasia looked at my sash. "That's mine," she cried, grabbing my sash and ripping my dress. "Please stop," I cried. But it was too late. My dress was ruined. I ran into the garden and flung myself down on a bench. I sobbed as if my heart would break. I was so upset that at first I didn't see the magical swirl of light gather around, and when I looked up, an old woman was sitting on the bench. "I'm your fairy godmother," the lady said kindly. "Now, dry your tears, we can't have you going to the ball looking like that. Now fetch me a pumpkin and hurry, even miracles take a little time." Minutes later, the fairy godmother waved her magic wand over the pumpkin. "Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo!" she sang. The pumpkin changed into a sparkling carriage. "Now," said the fairy godmother, "with an elegant coach like that, we'll simply have to have mice." I was surprised as you are. With that, she waved her wand, and for Gus, Jacques, and my friends and changed them into proud white horses. Another wave of her wand, and my horse was changed into a coachman, and Bruno, my dog, he was changed into a footman. Then, with a final wave of her wand, I was dressed in a magnificent ball gown and delicate glass slippers. "Oh, thank you," I cried, stepping into the carriage. "It's like a dream coming true." "I know, my dear, but remember, you only have until midnight," the fairy godmother warned. "On the last stroke of 12, the spell will be broken." At the palace, I entered the glittering ballroom excitedly. Glancing up, the prince saw me and thought I was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He took my hand and led me to the dance floor. He knew I had finally fallen in love, and dancing in the prince's arms, I felt as though I was floating on air. So this is love, so this is love, so this is what makes love take flight. My heart has wings and I can fly. Oh goodness, I'm so sorry, I got distracted there for a second. You see, it was such a romantic night that I completely forgot about the time, and suddenly I heard a loud clock chime. It was the first stroke of midnight. "I must go," I gasped as I fled through the ballroom and down the palace steps. "Wait, you can't go now," cried the prince. But I didn't stop. Even when I lost one of my glass slippers on the step, I leapt into the carriage and kept running. At the last stroke of midnight, the carriage turned back into a pumpkin, and I found myself dressed in rags once more. But I was still wearing a single glass slipper. Back at the palace, the prince was heartbroken. He declared he would only marry the girl whose foot fitted the glass slipper. The next day, the Grand Duke began his search. Every maiden in the land would fit on the glass slipper and try to be the prince's true love. Meanwhile, my stepmother noticed that I was humming the music from the ball. She was determined that I would not try on that slipper. Then I went up to my room. She followed me and locked the door. At last, the Grand Duke arrived. Anastasia and Drizella were very excited. Taking their turn, they tried to squeeze their feet into the tiny glass slipper, but their feet were much, much too big. Jacques and Gus were desperately trying to help me. They took the attic key from my stepmother's pocket and slowly pushed it up the stairs to my room. Hot and tired, they finally managed to open the door and free me. Just as the Grand Duke was about to leave, I appeared. "Please wait," I called. "May I try on the slipper?" The Grand Duke led me to a chair and called for the footman. As the footman stepped forward, the wicked stepmother tripped him up. The slipper flew through the air. There was a loud crash and it hit the floor, shattering into 1,000 tiny pieces. "Oh no!" the Grand Duke exclaimed. "Perhaps this would help," I said, reaching into my pocket and bringing out the other glass slipper. My stepmother shrieked as the delighted Duke fitted the slipper onto my foot. Soon afterwards, the prince and I got married. My friends, the mice, looked and smiled. They knew all of my dreams had just finally come true. Thank you all for listening to my story, and be sure to check in whenever there's another story time. All of your princess friends are just waiting to tell you a new tale, a new adventure. Stay magical.